For decades, a really dark shadow hung over the Ardennes forest, right there along the border of France and Belgium. It was cast by a man named Michel Fourniret, but he was better known as the Ogre of the Ardennes. And his story, well, it's one of just pure predatory evil. By the time he died, Fourniret had confessed to murdering at least 12 people, most of them young women and girls. I mean, that number is just staggering, and it absolutely solidified his place as one of the most prolific serial killers in modern history. But here's the twist, and it's what makes this case so uniquely horrifying. Fourniret wasn't a lone monster hunting in the shadows. He had an accomplice, someone who enabled his absolute darkest desires, and it was his own wife. This isn't just a story about a killer, it's about a monstrous partnership. So to really get our heads around this, we'll start with the man himself. Then we'll uncover the twisted criminal pact he forged. We're going to follow their reign of terror, see how it all came crashing down, and finally, look at the lingering shadows and the questions that still remain today. Okay, first up, let's look at the man at the center of it all. Just who was Michel Fourniret before his name became a synonym for absolute terror? Well, if you looked at his early life, you'd think it was pretty unremarkable. He was born back in 1942, and people who knew him remembered a quiet, kind of intelligent kid. As an adult, he just drifted from one menial job to the next. But under that quiet surface, a predator was taking shape. He was first arrested for sexual assault when he was just 24, and by 1984, he was right back in prison, this time for assaulting 5 more girls. And it was during this prison sentence that the whole story took its most sinister turn. Right, so this is where a solo predator evolves into something way more terrifying. This is where the partnership was born, and it all started, believe it or not, with a prison pen pal ad. So while he's locked up, Fourniret starts placing these ads in magazines, looking for someone to write to. And a woman named Monique Olivier answers. In their letters, he didn't hold back at all. He wrote openly about his violent fantasies, about abducting, raping, and murdering virgins. And Monique Olivier's response to this? She offered to help him do it. The cold-blooded nature of their agreement is just stunning. It was a deal, a quid pro quo. She would help him find his victims if he would murder her husband. Now, he never actually carried out his side of that specific bargain, but the pact itself, it was sealed. The minute he was released in 1987, their reign of terror began.
So he's a free man, and their criminal partnership kicks into high gear. With Olivier's help, Fourniret develops this chillingly effective method for luring young women and girls.
I mean, it was just months after his release in 1987 that they committed their first murder together. Monique Olivier's role was absolutely crucial. She'd often be the one to approach a victim, a non-threatening woman, asking for directions or help, creating this total false sense of security. They killed and even buried victims at their own home, the ominous Château du Satou. For more than 15 years, they spread fear across communities in France and Belgium. And this is the human cost of their pact. Girls and young women like Isabelle Lavelle, Elizabeth Brichet, and 9-year-old Estelle Mouzine. Every single name you see here represents a family that was completely torn apart, families who spent years just desperate for answers. This is the real, devastating impact of what they did. But even a reign of terror this long couldn't last forever. In the end, it was all brought down by one single, desperate act of survival. In June of 2003, Fourniret tried to abduct another 13-year-old girl, but she fought back. She managed to escape, and crucially, she identified his van. This led right to his arrest. For a full year, both he and Olivier denied everything. But then, the criminal pact that started it all, it finally shattered. Monique Olivier cracked. She informed on her husband, detailing their years of murder. And with her testimony, Fourniret's whole wall of silence just crumbled, and he started to confess. So in 2008, justice was finally served. Fourniret was given a full life sentence, no chance of parole. Monique Olivier was also convicted for her direct role in all of this and got a life sentence herself, with a minimum of 28 years. Their horrific partnership, which started through prison letters, had finally led them both right back to a prison cell for the rest of their lives. You might think that's the end of the story, right? Both of them behind bars for good. But it was far from over. Fourniret was still holding on to secrets, and in the final years of his life, he started to let them out. For years, investigators kept pushing him, trying to get answers for dozens of cold cases they suspected he was involved in. And then, in a final series of absolutely chilling revelations, he gave them some. In 2018, he admitted to 2 more murders from the late 80s. And then, in 2020, nearly 2 decades after she vanished, he finally confessed to killing little Estelle Mouzin. It's like he held on to the pain of these families as his last final form of power. On May 10, 2021, Michel Fourniret died in a secure hospital unit in Paris. And while his death certainly closed a dark chapter for law enforcement, for the families of his victims, it didn't end the story. And that leaves us with this final haunting question. Fourniret confessed to over a dozen murders, but police suspect the real number could be much, much higher. With the remains of Estelle Mouzin and others still missing, we're left to wonder, what other truths, what other names, and what other final resting places did the ogre of the Ardennes take with him to the grave?